So this coming Leil Shishi, Thursday night, is Lag BOmer. And last week, we spoke about V'ahavto l'reacho kamoicha. Lag BOmer is a huge day. And in the recent decades, it has become huge. It is the biggest getting together, the biggest gathering by far in the entire Jewish world. 500,000 people come together. A few years ago, there was a huge tragedy because the infrastructure that was built hundreds of years ago wasn't meant to serve so many people. So we all hope and pray things will go well. What is Lag BOmer all about? So most people know it's the Yom Elul, the yahrzeit of Reb Shimon, which is not clear at all. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tov Tzadik Gimel says, why is Lag BOmer a day of simcha? Mepnei she'omrim sheposka hamagefa. It is Lag BOmer that the plague was finally over. The Chido brings a Messiahs, a tradition. Lag BOmer was the day in which Rabbi Akiva gathered the strength and started to teach Rabbi Seinu Shebedorim, his 5 great later Talmidim, Rab Meir, Rab Shimon bar Yochai, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. So there are different reasons. What is the simcha regarding Lag BOmer? So I once had a thought, and I actually don't remember whether I shared this with you last week or not, because I give so many shiurim. I usually remember what I say, but I can no longer remember what I say, where, and when. So lo nagu kavod zeh b'zeh, and that is what brought this terrible curse, this terrible plague. Rabbi Salanter told us Talmidim, the 49 days of Svira coincide with Memches Dvorim Shatayra Nikneis Bohem. And he actually required his Talmidim, each and every day you need to work on one of those HaTorah Nikneis B'Memches Dvorim that are specified in the last Perek of Masechet Weiss. The Chidush Sharim taught the same to his Chassidim before Rabbi Salanter. The Maral me Prague, 200 years earlier, said the same. These two numbers are associated one with the other. Memches Kinyon HaTorah, Memtes Dvorim Shatayra Nikneis Behem. And I guess Rabbi Akiva knew what the Salanter knew, what the Chidush Sharim knew, what the Maral knew. And maybe Rabbi Akiva taught the same to his Talmidim. Every day work on one of those midos. If you take out a siddur between Mincha and Marav, Shabbos afternoon or Mishnayos, and you start counting the Memches Dvorim Shatayra Nikneis Behem, you'll realize that number 32 is Oya Veisabriyos. Day 32, they invested and learned and worked at Avos Abriyos. Day 33, the plague was over. Those are disciples of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the one that taught us. V'ahavto l'reacho kamoicha zaklal godel b'Torah. So that's my feeling. But now let me share with you the Kabbalistic approach to Lag BOmer, which is a totally different approach. All the others assume that Lag BOmer is a day of joy because of events that happened on this day. Either because the plague was finally over, or because Rabbi Akiva mustered the strength and started to rebuild the world of Torah on this day, or maybe because it's the yahrzeit of Reb Shimon, which is somewhat of a chiddush, because usually the yahrzeit is a day of mourning. The Riach Kodesh himself in Shara Kavonis says it really goes the other way around. Lag BOmer is not a special day because of what happened on this day. Lag BOmer intrinsically, into itself, is a very special day. Lag BOmer is the day in which Midas Adin nefach l'rachamim. And that is why this day, Notal Asora Atoros. Because this is such a special day, that is why in this day the plague was over. That is why in this day Rabbi Akiva started to teach Rabbi Seinu Shebedorim. It's not that it's a special day because of the events that happened on this day, but the other way around. Because it's a special day, that is why so many wonderful things happened on this day. And why is it a special day? So the Riyah Kodesh explains. Probably most of you know that Shem Havaya indicates Lachmim and Shem Elokim is always Midas Adin. We find that in Rashi al Torah in the Midrash Chazal. However, the biggest Lachamim come out of Midas Adin. And this is a principle we find in many sources. B'gevuros yesha yeminoi. In Sidra Agra, he says, this posuk contradicts itself. Gevuros is Midas Adin. Yemin is Lachamim. Small doche, v'yemin mekarevet. Small doche is Midas Adin, yemin mekarevet is Lachamim. B'gevuros yesha yeminoi. So the Gaon says, the greatest Lachamim always come out of Midas Adin. And that is why we say Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed in the second brocha in Shmoynes Tfilas Amida. That is defined as Bechas HaGvuros, Gvuros Gishomim. And that is where we say Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed. The greatest Rachamim must come out of Midas Adin. Rabbi Yankov Emden, in his magnificent Siddur Beis Yaakov, on the day of Lag BOmer, has a shocking line, and he writes, why is Lag BOmer such a great day? Because it is Toikef Midas Adin. It is the greatest Midas Adin. And that is why it's Nefech LaRachamim. According to Gemara in Sanhedrin Sharo'o Kulam L'chayva Poitre Moisei. We need a basin of 23 to be done din and nefoshes. And the majority passes the verdict. If 13 dayonim say chayev, the person is destroyed. Dalad Mises based on. If all 23 dayonim say chayev, not one of them sees room for leniency, we send the person home. That is a strange din. If 22 say chayev and one says zakai, he is capital punishment. If all 23 say chayev, we send him safely home. So Rabbi Yaakov says, if it's so bad, it's got to be good. Can it be so bad? Which is an interesting analogy. Some mystical one. So Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, Lag BOmer is the greatest Midas Adin, and that is why Midas Adin as if explodes or implodes, and that is when Rachamim shines out, which is an interesting concept. So let's go back to the Riyah Kodesh in Shara Kavonis. Shem Elokim is Midas Adin. When din is transformed into Rachamim, the three middle letters, Lamed Hey Yud, move back. The Lamed becomes a Chof, the Hey a Daled, the Yud a Tes, and Elokim becomes Shem Achdatam, because the three inner letters move back. So the commentators of the Ari say, and what happens with the Aleph and the Mem? They stay in place. Why is that? Because the Aleph has nowhere to go. Can't go back because there's nothing before Aleph. If the Aleph goes back, he falls off the cliff. So the Aleph has nowhere to go. So he stays an Aleph. The Mem Sofit, if he goes back, he stays a Mem. Because before the Mem, the end of Mem comes a Mem. My feeling is, it is the inner letters, the Pnimius, that must turn Din into Rachamim. Because in Pnimius, Din is always Rachamim. And that is what Rebbe Kiva, the great Rebbe Kiva, teaches us. Kol diyovid rachman elatav ovid. Anochem ish gamzu. Whenever tragedy strikes, he says, Gam zu l'toivo. So Midas Din and Pnimius is Rachamim. And that is why it is the Oisius of Pnimios. There are always the active component to turn Din into Rachamim. So Elokim becomes Achdatam. So in Pashas V'yetzei, when Yaakov Avinu decides to part, he takes his wives and his children, and he leaves Oven's home, and Oven chases them, and then we have this dramatic encounter between Yaakov and Lavan, which at the end of a very angry exchange, they decide to make a bris, a covenant. And they put up a mizbeach, Eid Hagal Hazeh, V'Yaakov korelo Gal Eid. The Riyah Kodesh says Gal is a remez for Lamed Gimel, and that's Lag BOmer. Gal Eid is 74. That is the numerical value, the gematria of Achdatam. Chov Daletes is Lamed Gimel. Those three letters that transform Din into Rachamim are the gematria Lamed Gimel, and that is Lag BOmer, and that is Gal. Gal Eid is 74. 74 is the gematria of the entire Shem of Rachamim. Achdatam equals 74. So the Riyah Kodesh says, this is what happens every year on Lag BOmer. In the Yemei Sfira, Midas Din is built up. It reaches a climax on Lag BOmer, and then Midas Adon melts away, and Elokim becomes Achdatam, and that is when Rachamim manifests itself. And that is intrinsic. That happens every year on Lag BOmer. So it is not that Lag BOmer is a wonderful day because wonderful things happened on that day. Wonderful things happened on Lag BOmer because that is the nature of Lag BOmer, in which Din is Nefach LaRachamim, and the formula is Elokim, which is the Shem of Din, is transformed to Achdatam. Another thought I had, Yishukenu minashikois piu ki toivim doidecho miyayin. There's a Rashi on the spot, which I never feel comfortable talking about Barabim. But Rashi says there are many different ways in which people kiss each other. Children kiss their mother's hand, Leil Shabbos, that is a minikodum. Sometimes you kiss a person on his cheek. When people kiss mouth to mouth, that is the ultimate expression of ahava. And that is what the Pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Yishokenu minashikois pihu. In the story of Shir Hashirim, the Dod and the Raya, which are a Kodesh Baruch Hu and Knesset Yisrael, a Kodesh Baruch Hu kisses us, and we kiss him, Yishokenu minashikois pihu. And that is the ultimate expression of ahava, writes Rashi on Shir Hashirim. Yishokenu minashikois pihu, ki toivim doidecho. Rosh Tevis, Chof, Daled, Tet. Those are the three letters that turned into Rachamim. Ki toivim doidecho. Instead of Lamed Heyud, those three letters become Chof, Daled, Tet, and that is the Rosh Tevis, ki toivim doidecho. When a Kodesh Baruch Hu loves us, and we reciprocate, and we love a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and that is Yishokenu minashikois piu. That is how Midas Adin is Nefach LaRachamim. So this day Lag BOmer is a great day. Whether you go to Meron or you don't. You know, the Meor Enaim says, if you learn Reb Shimon's Torah, it is as if you went to a skaver. And I say, if you go to a skaver, it is as if you learned his Torah. So my minig is, every year like BOmer, I learn Zohar, I learn the Idra, which describes what Reb Shimon did in that last day of his life, and the Sodus HaTorah that he taught his Talmidim. So it's a great day. It's a great to daven. It's a day to daven. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should, all our tefillah should be niskabel. Today I was in Shari Tzedek, getting my procedure, and I visited some wounded soldiers that came there, Baruch Hashem, very good spirits. I also visited a young yeshiva boy that was critically injured in a car accident, and I want you to daven for him and learn for him. Yoina ben Sheina Rivka visited the boy who murdam v'minsham. He's still unconscious, and he needs a lot of rachamei shamayim. A 15-year-old yeshiva boy that was hit by a car that went through a red light. The boy was 100% okay. So Yoina ben Sheina Rivka, Shekadosh Baruch Hu Yishlach Lo Refuah Shleima min Hashamayim, we should only share b'Seiris Toivus, and of the schus of the Tana, Reb Shimon bar Yechui. All our tefillah should be niskabel. We should only hear b'Seiris Toivus, Yeshuas and Achamos, and we should be zeicher to see Pnei Mashiach Tzidkeinu b'mheiro v'yomeinu. Amen.